I'd like to call the Budget and Public Employees Committee hearing to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Oldenburg.
Here.
Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderwoman Sanye.
Present.
Alderman Aldrich. Chair Spencer.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderman Aldrich. We have 3 present.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and get started today. This is a continuation of the budget process that the city has been going through for the last 3 weeks now. Just by way of a little bit of background, as you all know, the budget, as we're going to be discussing today, was passed to the Board of Aldermen by the Board of E&A. And that was passed just 3 weeks ago. So the Board of Aldermen is contemplating the city's budget, which you can find in its entirety on the city's website. But a detailed summary of that is before you in the PowerPoint, which I believe everybody should have. As we all know, budgets are really reflections of the values of the organization that they represent. And the organization that we are discussing here is the City of St. Louis, and you all, presumably because you're here today, are taxpayers, or you are invested in some way, shape, or form in this city. This is your budget. It's your city, and this is your budget. And so it is imperative and very important to all of us that you, as the stakeholders of our city, have the opportunity to weigh in on our city's budget. You may know that the Board of Aldermen has the authority to cut items in the budget, but we do not have the authority to add. However, we do have a loud voice, and we do advocate from time to time for things that we believe should be in the budget, and we have been successful at doing so. So just because we do not currently have that authority doesn't mean that we can't, nor that we should not advocate for things that are missing. Typically speaking, during the budget process, the Board of Aldermen conducts hearings in the chambers, which we have been doing for the last couple weeks, and then we invite the public to have a presentation and then weigh in. Tonight is the first of 2 public engagement budget hearings that we will be conducting, the second of which will be on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Tonight, generally speaking, typically we invite our budget director, Mr. Paul Payne, who's largely responsible for putting together the nuts and bolts of our budget, to come and present it to the public, as he does before the Board of E&A and the Board of Aldermen. Unfortunately, due to a scheduling conflict, he's unable to join us tonight. So I'm going to go through quickly an overview of this presentation before us. But the most important aspect of tonight in this hearing is to hear from you all. So what we're going to do to make sure that, I think our clerk in the hallway has informed you all, but there's a sign-up sheet if you'd like to speak on the budget, on any aspect of the budget, or any aspect of priorities of the City of St. Louis that you'd like to speak on. If you decide during the hearing that you'd like to speak and you haven't signed up, just at any time you're welcome to add your name to the list. If you'd like to remove your name from the list, you're welcome to do that at any time. But don't feel like because you have or have not signed up that you're either required or inhibited from weighing in on your city's budget. A couple of logistics. First of all, I should be thanking the Urban League for hosting us tonight. They're not only hosting us, but this is the first time we've been fed during a budget hearing. And there's a great spread out front, if you haven't already. I was eating granola like a maniac on the way here. I wouldn't have done that if I'd have known how gracious our hosts were being tonight. A couple of other logistics. We have restrooms. If you go out here, turn left and then turn right. You won't lose your place. If you do happen to miss it, we'll come back to you. Please don't worry about that, but we want you to remain comfortable during the hearing. And lastly, I want to thank our staff, our St. Louis, our STL TV, and all the Board of Aldermen staff. We've been literally doing at this since 9 a.m. this morning. We're going to continue to do this. This is a big effort. We've been going through the budget in great detail, and it's a very tedious process, but one that's very, very, very important. Before we get started, by show of hands, does anyone have any questions on the process or any logistics of the space or what you might need? Okay, well then we'll get started. Okay, the City of St. Louis, the proposed fiscal year 2025 annual operating plan as presented to the Board of Estimate and Apportionment on April 17th, 2024. As you can see from page 2, our annual operating plan for fiscal year 2025 totals $1.33 billion. It's a big budget, and it's a lot to cover here. This is an increase of 0.4% over the previous year. Something to note here, while that's an increase, it is not keeping pace with inflation. So our budget does get tight every year. That's a little anecdote that Paul Payne doesn't always add. But you can see here we have several funds that make up our budget. The general fund, which is projected this year to be $58 million. Special revenues, $255 million. Grant funding at $61 million. Our debt service fund at $15 million. Capital improvements fund at $81 million. And our enterprise funds, which comprise $308 million. The enterprise funds are our airport, our water department, and our parking division. So generally speaking, the function of your city government is that without those enterprise funds. You can see from page 3, our proposed annual operating plan. A big portion of our city's budget comes from our earnings tax. We saw in the paper earlier today that we lost a judgment. I haven't been able to be fully briefed on this, on the implications of that. But the city was preparing for that possibility by including in this year's budget a provision of $26 million to account for potential lost revenue because of that lawsuit. But our earnings tax makes up about 1/3 of our city's budget. Without it, our city would truly not be able to function. Our payroll tax is up 1.6%. You can see that quarter by quarter in that bottom box. On page 4, you can see our 1 cent. We have some special funds here. This is basically a review of our revenue. Our 1 cent sales tax is up 0.6%. Our local use tax year to date is up 27.7%. That's a form of sales tax. We have some good news on the restaurant and hotel receipts tax. Both the restaurant's up 4.6% and our hotel is up 2.4%. This is important because it also indicates kind of how we're doing as far as people going out, enjoying our city, and tourism, which is a big driver of revenue for cities in general. Okay, going on to page 6. You can see all the funds kind of stacked up together there. The general fund, the local use, and kind of how we're doing on a revenue side as an estimate of fiscal year 2025. On page 7, the proposed annual operating plan. Our beginning base revenue estimates $566 million. You can see that is basically our base revenue that we're projecting to be our city's budget for fiscal year 2025. That's essentially what our beginning base fiscal year 2024 with $566 million. So you see kind of a flat from what we actually, our projected revenue for this year is pretty much equal to the realized revenue of last year, which was slightly above what was projected. So that flat revenue line is important to note because our city isn't growing. And this committee has taken a deep dive into some of the factors in that, one of which is massive population loss. We're seeing an enormous amount of people leaving our city, in particular leaving North St. Louis. So we have got to make sure that our budget reflects the needs and desires and the values of our residents, particularly in North St. Louis, if we want to stem that population loss and stabilize it and keep all of our residents that are here. We can go through all these details. The proposed annual plan, you can see from the next page, what we're looking at here is real changes in the operating plan by department. So what you're seeing is not the total amount allocated to department, but the sort of changes. So for example, you've got the Parks, Recreation, and Forestry, a slight increase, a total increase of 2.4, I believe that is in millions over the previous year's budget. Okay. So going down the page, we have the judicial offices, county offices, the streets department, which includes our refuse department. You see the biggest item there is a 1.3 adjustment on salaries for refuse drivers. We were having a hard time retaining our refuse department drivers, and they get very nice offers to leave our city because by the time, they're driving a trash truck, they've got some pretty technical licensing, and so they're highly sought out. So we included some adjustments for that. Our public safety department, you're seeing that public safety in general is seeing a decrease from last year's budget. And the fire department here has a slight increase of 4.5 million based on some salary offsets. You can kind of go through, on page 10, we've got other public safety. This is including our Justice Center and the Civilian Oversight Board, as well as SEMA, which is our emergency management system, as well as our building division. So really, I think one of the most instructive pieces here would be page 12, where you can see kind of all the departments stacked on top of each other, where our money is going from a department perspective, and where those percentage changes from last year are. So I think if you were to really want to dial in on one page, page 12 would be it. Okay. I will fully admit that Mr. Payne does a much better and more thorough job in the presentation here. I don't want to bore any members of the audience. So what I'll do now is kind of just take a temperature of the room. Would you like me to go in any more detail on some of these, or would you like to start the process of kind of weighing in on the budget itself? You have a couple questions?
Any further what human services only gets 0.1%?
Can you say that again? Where are we at? What page are you on?
Human services. Can you provide any further information of why the human services department only gets 0.1% of the budget?
Oh, no, so that is, you mean in a general sense? So, can you show me specific, are you looking at the percentage change or the total of the budget?
On page 10.
Okay. So again, I want to say, this is the budget as presented to us by the Board of E&A. So the Board of Aldermen doesn't determine this budget, but we are here to approve it and improve it. Improve it and approve it. So, the Department of Human Services, that would be our health department, and kind of, it also, under that would be youth, homelessness and things like that, human services of that nature. Okay, thanks. Madam Clerk, okay, so here's what we'll do. If we have specific questions on the budget, I think we should take some time to go through some of those questions. And what I'll ask, because there are people tuning in from home, and this is going to be documented, that anybody with a question just simply maybe come to the mic. We can do this in a fairly informal manner. If you don't mind, what I'll do is repeat your question, why the Human Services Department only has that 0.1 in the revenue line. What you're looking at there, I just want to point that out, that is a change over last year. So that is 0.1 over last year's budget. So those, on page 10, those pages, and again, I didn't make this presentation, so my apologies, but pages 8, 9, and 10 are really looking at the change over last year. And the reason why the budget director does that is to give you an idea of over last year's baseline. Are we going up? Are we going down in each individual department? But so there's a slight increase in the human services budget by way of that $0.1 million. Okay? Does anybody else have a question on the budget before
I
we
have
go
a
into
question on the budget. Is the ARPA funds and the stadium money in this budget or
No,
separate?
those are separate, so that's a great question. The city was allocated $498 million in ARPA funds, and we were also awarded $250 some odd million in the RAM settlement. None of those funds are in this budget. This is our city's general budget, which is outside of those two funding sources. Thank you for that question and clarification. So do you have a question? Do you mind, just because for the folks at home, or
To come to the mic.
do you mind coming to the mic? If you have a mobility issue, I can go ahead and repeat it.
When will the money be back to the budget? The RAM money and the first one you said?
Oh, the question was, when will those funding sources, the ARPA money and the RAMS money, come before the budget? The ARPA money, the COVID money that the city of St. Louis received has pretty much all been programmed. The Board of Aldermen has approved, largely speaking, the buckets into which those funds are going to be spent. They are in the process right now of being expended, but that process has already happened. If you want to see where those funds are going, the city has a ARPA transparency portal, which I believe would be the first website that comes up if you Google that term, ARPA transparency portal, and you can see where those funds are where they've been allocated and which portions of them have actually been spent. As far as the RAMS money goes, that money is right now in an interest-bearing account, and the Board of Aldermen and many other stakeholders are taking input, in the process right now of taking input on those funds before programming them.
Chair Spencer, we have folks already signed up. Anyone else that wants to speak or ask questions, we have the sign-up sheets out front so that we can go in an order.
Okay, thank you so
Yeah.
much, Madam Clerk. I was just trying to get a sense if there were questions about the budget itself.
Yes.
But I think maybe, given that we've kind of exhausted that, what we'll do is we will go into the public comment section. And remember, this is your budget. You're free to comment on whatever you would like to on the budget. We want to hear what's important to you, what you want funded in your city's budget, and any issues that you have. What I'll do, Madam Clerk, if you don't mind, we do ask people to swear in oftentimes. I've been allowing our department heads to kind of come before us and city employees without that, but just for a matter of kind of consistency, I'll just ask everybody here who is planning on speaking to raise your right hand or your left hand, raise a hand or a foot. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help us all.
Yeah.
Okay. It looks like you all look like an honest bunch. Okay. Okay. Madam Clerk, and what we'll do to facilitate the public input portion, I'll ask Madam Clerk, if you don't mind, to go through and call on residents as they have signed in to testify.
Okay. First, we have Ms. Gwen Cogshell.
My name is Gwendolyn Coxshell. I'm from Ward 10, and my concern is I'm against the budget because I don't see enough money in for parks and recreation. You all closed this building, and this building, ever since you all stopped running it, city ran a West End Community Center, was donated to the community by the Jews in 1968 to be used as a recreation center. I found that on the deed downtown. And what I'm saying is you all lease this building out. When you lease out a building, I want to ask you, the people lease it out is supposed to keep maintaining it, I thought. So why would you lease this big building out to one person and they only utilize a small percentage of the building? When we had it, we had basketball coming out of there, we had a swim team, we had football teams, and the people that worked that was employed by the city used to come sometime on Sunday because they know we wanted to get in there into that gym. When we first got into the building in 1968, we never saw a handball court. The building has 2 full court gyms, 2 handball courts, a boxing ring, indoor swimming pool, a big stadium where the Black Repertory Theater operated on. We had plays in there, Girl Scouts and everything. We want this building reopened, restored, and revitalized. They say they don't have any money. I don't think that's true. You got more money than you ever had in years. And for us, North St. Louis and its budget, you know, I've been riding around this city forever. I don't see any improvements. Our schools are closing, our grocery stores are closing. We living in food deserts, and you wonder why people moving out when the school taking resources, basketball, the football, swimming team we used to have. So why would somebody stay in the city of St. Louis when the schools don't offer athletics, where now in college they're actually paying athletes like millions of dollars? So why would somebody's son want to go to a soda inn or somebody that don't have those facilities? So I'm not seeing the development in North St. Louis. I don't know where the money been going for, not you all, but the people that came before you all has done nothing in North St. Louis. And I'll end it with this, with one of my brothers said this. He said that with every injustice formed against black people in this country, there has been and will always be a fight to stand our ground in the pursuit of justice, progress, and prosperity. Keep swinging back and forth. The reality becomes self-evident that for as long as blacks and whites share occupancy in this America, it will always be a house divided, for it is made clear to us in every way that the right-wing party today and yesterday has always taken a principled stand when it comes to African people. For every degree of progress achieved or imagined for people of African descent, a racist backlash policy will be created to set them back. The 2024 election carries no exception to this principle, as in Jefferson City now, they're trying to close our library. So, you know, when is it gonna stop? And when are we gonna get, it's like taxation without representation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Amber Cole. And I did want to inform you guys that we have 3 minutes. Am I correct,
That's
Chair
correct.
Spencer?
Madam
Okay.
Clerk, do you mind, I can.
Yeah, we're keeping time.
You're going to keep time, okay.
Yes.
Ms. Gwynn, before you leave,
She talking to you, ma'am.
sure, Ms. Gwynn, can you share with us what is the, no, the website, the story. Did Alderman Aldridge, did you have?
I was just curious, like last year, we always each speaker go through the committee to respond.
Do we want to do that? It might take a long time. If you,
I'd wait till the end.
I think if we wait till the end, it'll be fine. Thank you. All right, Madam Clerk, please proceed.
Okay, you want me to proceed?
And if you don't mind, introduce yourself, and if you're comfortable, state the ward or the neighborhood or some indication of where in the city you're hailing from.
Okay, I'm Amber Cole. I'm from the 11th Ward, where Laura Keys is my alderperson. I was looking through the budget, and there's certain things that I'm okay with, but there's other things that I think it needs to be redivided. One of the things I did not see in this budget is an audit of all the different departments, because we're steady paying money out, but nothing's being audited, and I don't see things change. So I would like to see an audit in there. Listening to some of the budget hearings, I was listening to the Health Department and CJC, and they both had something with the new health, the Health Department was taking over the medical unit. Well, both units are doing something, so I didn't understand how one was getting the same thing. The thing was overlapping. So I didn't too much understand that. I was looking at the police budget. I'm totally pro-police. So I believe in the shot fire. I still want that. I would like the streets department I would like some increase on that. The Treasury Department, I like for somebody to look into the Treasury Department because things don't seem like it's right because we don't get no kind of parking privileges and things like downtown does. You know, you get moving around, they doing tickets, I would like to see an officer involved there for tickets and monitoring that. I think the refuse department, yay. I give all kudos out to my refuse department because they are on their job. The parks department, I would like to see more security in there because I don't see that in there. When we're going into the season, it hasn't even got hot, and we're already off the chain. Let me know how, when I'm about finished. I was listening to the airport meeting. It didn't make sense at all. Because one minute they said we were but looking at 2019 as our catalyst of aircrafting and all that. And then you tell me that we're at the same, so you're happy because you're at the same level of 2019, but we're in double with prices. So the stuff don't make sense when people coming into the budget. When we're looking at building demolition, I would like to say, I don't know if is that under Ward Capital or is building demolition part of this budget? Do we get this? So I would like to see some demolition. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next, next we have Ms. Courtney Chess.
It's Courtney Chess Club. I'm Courtney.
Oh,
McFadden.
Courtney Chess Club, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
ma'am. What's up, man?
Okay, what's your
Okay,
name?
I'm Courtney McFadden from Wells Goodfellow, Courtney Chess Club.
What ward is that?
Wells Goodfellow.
13.
Lord. Okay. This just my first or second time being to one of these meetings. I'm not as smart as y'all, but the negative things like the 23 in grant funds, the 23 drop in grant funds, the some 3.8 in specials, and the negative 38 in grant funds. So if you don't give out the money that's able to be given out and you take less of that, where does that money go?
This is the grant funds are our revenue sources. You're looking at page 2, so that negative 23%, that's a reduction in grant funds to the city. So this is our revenue line rather than what the city is handing out grants.
They had less to give out, is what you're saying, right?
This is less money, grant funding to the city. So the city applies for grants for, homeless services, grants for STD testing, grants for road improvements. They apply for grants from the state, from the federal government, from other government or other entities. So this is a reduction in the revenue that the city gets, primarily for department functioning, but in the way of grants.
And you, can you hear me? You spoke about some buckets that the money was put in. You basically saying that money was already expended, you said? The RAM money or the Arthur somebody?
The ARPA funds have been programmed.
Who is he? Who is Arthur?
The ARPA money, so I mentioned on the front end of this, 2 pots of money that is not included. You were asking about the COVID money. That's also known as ARPA money, the American Rescue Plan Act. And then the other money was the Rams, the stadium money that we got from losing the Rams.
Okay. The 26 million loss for 2024, you said was a lawsuit?
Where is this?
It was something you said.
Oh, this 26 million, I was talking about our earnings tax. Our earnings tax has been threatened by Jefferson City.
No, ma'am. You said we lost $26 million last year due to a lawsuit. I don't know what you're talking about. You said, you was right there. You said we lost $26 million to a lawsuit. in 2024?
So what I was saying was, our earnings tax, which makes up 1/3 of our city's budget, has been threatened by Jefferson City and by lawsuits. We passed through the legislative session without Jefferson City doing any action, which is a good thing. That's a win for us. But there were lawsuits related to people who don't live in the city of St. Louis, work in the city of St. Louis, pay earnings tax, and they wanted to be rebated for those days for which they're not in the city. They got a judgment in their favor this week, which means that our earnings, our ability to collect earnings tax on those people, is on the chopping block. So what we did in this budget includes a $26 million provision that was set in there, a hole in the budget, if you will, in case that judgment or a judgment similar to that happened. And so we were protecting ourselves by kind of carving out that $26 million on the front end of it. So we don't know exactly what the loss will be. To your question, what the revenue loss will be, we don't know until people file and to tell us
You're
how many days.
saying we just set it aside for a
Correct.
rainy day?
We cut out a hole, and we said, we're gonna assume we're not gonna get that.
Well,
And,
Mr. McSpadden, that was your time.
But you know what, if you want, Mr. McSpadden, we can say a little bit afterwards and answer your questions once we get through the questions.
Next, we have Mr. Stephen Witherspoon.
Hi, my name is Stephen Witherspoon. What I'm really concerned about, I'm gonna share a little information about myself. I was born, it ain't gonna take that long. But I want you to know I went to St. Mark's grade school. So I've been around for a while and, in my neighborhood in the 10th Ward. And what I'm seeing is things is changing. It's not getting better. I'm talking about when my parents, they didn't have a lot of money, but they paid tuition for me to go to St. Mark's. So, in their mind, they thinking that I was in a real good neighborhood because we had stores on each corner. We had Sears and Roebuck, different stores like that. And I remember, and I don't understand, I'm seeing things is deteriorating in my face, and people is coming in our neighborhood, don't live in our neighborhood, and it's tearing up the property of our neighborhood. They living in vacant houses and stuff like that, and I'm not seeing people coming there trying to tear down. What happened? I'm talking about, why are we not getting vacant houses torn down? And they've been there like 20 years. I'm talking about it don't make sense. I'm talking about my wife come home and she got weeds where she can't even get out of her car or go, get into her car. I have to pay somebody to cut the next door property. People coming in our neighborhood is buying vacant buildings, but they're not doing no work to them. That's my concern about. And on top of that, we got Ridge, going through Ridge, an Academy and Kings Highway and Martin Luther King. It's like a highway. People is constantly riding through, not stopping at no stop signs, none of that. Matter of fact, when you try to go in, when you come on Ridge and try to get onto Union, it's no stop sign, but they got a stop sign on Minerva. And it's a one-way. It's hard for people to get out from where they live at. It's some things that I just want to throw out there so you can pay some kind of attention to, because it's terrible. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Witherspoon. Next, we have Larry Marshall.
How you doing? My name is Larry. Growing up as a kid in Missouri. I've seen firsthand what poverty looks like, and growing up as a black male kid, I've seen firsthand what police profiling looks like. And I also know that more money, like $162 million going into the police department or budget is not what's going to help the city of St. Louis. But what I know will help is more resources in the community. We need housing, education, medication, better opportunities at health, food. Those are the things that we need. More police weapons is not what's going to heal. If you want people to stay in the city of St. Louis, it needs to be healed. It needs to be reconstructed. There's buildings all over the place falling apart. There's no attention to them. It's a hot mess. And putting more money into the police department is not going to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Next, we have Charles Bryson.
Good evening. Am I good? My name is Charles Bryson. I am here representing TrailNet. TrailNet is a regional nonprofit organization for safe streets for all users. We'd like to thank you all for holding this public hearing today to listen to the needs, wants, and desires of the residents of the city. The first thing that TrailNet would recommend is removal of funding for the 50/50 sidewalk program, which is about $5 million. The program has always been ineffective, with many people staying on the waiting list for years and many not being ready when their name is called due to emergent issues related to their household. So they're always put back all the way to the bottom of the waiting list. It makes no sense. Also, through the American Rescue Plan Act, the city, you all, appropriated $6 million for a citywide sidewalk repair. Instead of doing the same thing over and over again with little to show for it, those funds, roughly at $5 million, could begin a street maintenance line item, which does not exist currently, that can roll over every year, building it up over time as ARPA money runs out. Secondly, you may invest that money in ways to protect pedestrians and cyclists who use our streets and sidewalks. These could take many forms, such as fully protected bike lanes, better signage, wayfinding, traffic signal optimization, and quick build infrastructure solutions. Third, please fully fund both the Vision Zero planning process and 1 or 2 persons to oversee it. The resolution you passed requires funding and staffing to be actionable and to make meaningful changes. And finally, because of the amount of ARPA funds being reallocated, perhaps because those departments that it was initially appropriated to are unable to spend it all, as well as the amount of ward capital backlog due to total amount of each alderperson has, it makes sense to use some of those funds, again, to be used as a foundation for a street maintenance line item, which again, does not exist. Madam Chair and committee members, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. Next, we have, I believe this is Tammy Tate or Tawny Tate? I'm not sure. Tammy Tate.
But I really wanted to know about where the ARPA money went. You said it was in buckets, and you didn't tell us exactly where it was going. Because, as he said, we don't need really more policing. We need something more for those who are being policed. Like the Demetrius Johnson, the center itself. We need more of that to change the minds of those who are being policed and chased. Police don't even come when you call them in neighborhoods. When we see people breaking in empty homes to squat or whatever they're doing, but we definitely need more programs other than basketball for the youth in the summertime, because those are not the youth that we need to addressed. The youth that we need to come to those centers won't show up. We need that money, those buckets that you were talking about, some of that money to go toward that. Those kids out here that the police are chasing, like you said, that don't respect signs and lanes and whatever. But we need to keep those centers open. I mean, even for people like myself, who we did go. We took our grandchildren there and our children there so we can change their minds for what the police are out here chasing, that they will never catch up. The police will never catch up with this, with the crimes that we have going on in our communities. Leave those centers open. Let us have a place to go and exercise, and to take our grandchildren for movie nights, for everything that they provided for us. So let us keep those things open. That money that you got going in buckets, we don't see where that money is going. And it could be used for much, much a better use for these kids out here, 12, 14, whose parents apparently can't keep them in. But we need to have some place, something else for them to do. The community centers of basketball, that's not working for them. We need a whole change for these children. Please keep these centers open. For us, with children, who we're trying to keep on the right track, we're trying to keep on the right path. So let's do that, if we could. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tate. We have Chris Wilcock.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Chris Wilcox, and I live in the 14th Ward. So when we say the budgets reflect an institution's priorities, it's not a metaphor. It's a direct observation of material reality. I'm not certain I understood just how direct before this last year. The city was already spending only 2 cents on human services for every dollar spent on cops before 2 cents disappeared entirely. Small wonder that the city put that dollar to work destroying encampments occupied by unhoused people and their belongings. For all this hysteria about theft and property destruction, it turns out the law is perfectly fine when a cop is engaging in both, as long as it's an unhoused person's tent, personal documents, or a loved one's ashes. Cops are so good at stealing, in fact, that civil asset forfeiture exceeds all burglaries combined, so much in St. Louis that it funded ShotSpotter for a year, a sign that it's a good time as any to start dealing with both problems at once. All this is to say, when we call for defunding the police, we mean it, because it's the logic of that aspiration is direct, material, and plain to see. Right now, getting rid of ShotSpotter, Real-Time Crime Center, SWAT, and vacant positions would be a good start. To further illustrate why, I can't find a better example of the city's grotesque misalignments of priorities than its only housing proposal for unhoused neighbors being to build little boxes to warehouse them in a poisonous industrial site at the former location of the odious workhouse. If the city did defund SLMPD and took the painstaking recommendations of the community committee to re-envision the workhouse seriously, it could fund the Memorial Resource Hub, in addition to ensuring adequate funding for the new Impacted Tenants Fund, making ambitious investments in social housing and supportive housing besides. It could also offer food and medicine as a fraction of the cost to pay for uniformed armed goons to stand around in Schnucks and Walgreens all day. For the statistically minded, it's worth pointing out that there is no evidence that policing reduces violence and crime. Famously, in New York City, a city our esteemed police chief would know well, when cops organized to slow down, crime actually decreased. More recently, Jacob King Brown, a researcher from the Barry Institute, found an article in Criminology claiming that reducing police interventions in Denver increased crime actually showed that the opposite conclusion is true if you simply match the correct data by neighborhood. Finally, from the leaked data, we know that police surveillance in St. Louis is precisely tuned to over-police majority black neighborhoods. Thanks to the passage of C-Cops for the first time in 10 years, SLMPD will finally have to disclose how it uses the Real-Time Crime Center. Given that they are so unused to basic oversight, it seems like it would save a lot of time to simply cut the program before we finally have a chance to pore through it with a fine-tooth comb. Getting rid of the Real-Time Crime Center would be a win for the city and for the department, because we won't have to learn how many times over the last 10 years a cop used it to stalk his ex-wife. For once, a compromise I can get behind. Defund the police, fund housing and services. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Next, we have Pat Miller.
Good evening. My name is Pat Miller. I'm in the 10th Ward, and I have a super duper alderwoman that calls us. And when we call her, she calls us back. I don't care where she is and what she's doing, and I appreciate her. But I also realize she has a very big job, and she's dealing with some things that have been historically against North St. Louis. So she can't make all the changes. We want to keep her around for a long time, so we don't want to overwork her. But when you made this statement that you want to do things to help North St. Louis, you realize that everybody got up here didn't deal with the figures. We deal with the realities of the trash not being empty, the alleys being dirty. And South St. Louis is steadily growing. I want to live in a neighborhood where I can get up and walk to the coffee shop and come back. I can barely empty my trash. Something is wrong, and we keep waiting for the change to come, but ain't no change coming. So we need to be a priority. We don't need to be the last on the list, and we feel that. This room is not filled because people have given up hope. We're tired of fighting, but don't pay your taxes or you won't be able to renew your license plates. We want to let you know that we want what you want. We want to be able to open my door and walk to my trash and go to a nice restaurant that's owned by one of my brothers and sisters and come back home. We don't have that. So when you come and tell us that you want to do something for North St. Louis, we think you got some CBD or something like that, because it ain't nothing happening. It's nothing happening. So I wish you all would consider us as a priority. Back up your words with some action. Have a place where you can go get your alleys clean. Have somebody that we can call. And we need to get involved too. We don't need to take nothing. And we need to get out. We need to encourage people to vote. This is our city. But if you don't stand up and speak up for yourself, that's just what we're getting. Absolutely nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Rachel Hurtado.
Hello. I'm Rachel Hurtado. I live in Ward 7. And I wanted to draw attention quickly to the public safety hearing for y'all's committee that had the jail commissioner, Jennifer Clemens Abdullah, as well as the public safety director, who didn't even bother showing up to the hearing. That was embarrassing. Jennifer was woefully unprepared. Y'all know it. And there's a reason for that. It's because they come to the Board of Aldermen every year. They come to the Board of E&A, and they know that all of our elected officials are going to rubber stamp hundreds of millions of dollars for public safety solutions that don't actually keep us safe. So I know that some of these committee members understand that the root causes of many public safety concerns in this city come from poverty, from lack of affordable housing, from lack of youth support programs, lack of access to transportation. And I want to advocate the reallocation of funds away from public safety and police budgets, particularly the Real-Time Crime Center, vacant police positions, SWAT, and overtime, in a few specific ways. Increase the funding for the Office of Violence Prevention's Show Me Peace program to expand into more than just 3 St. Louis neighborhoods. We want more violence interrupters on our blocks, more proactive strategies for gun violence instead of reactive policing that won't keep anyone from getting shot in the first place. Everyone is concerned about traffic safety. We need massive investment into public streets infrastructure, not more criminalization like red light cameras as a Band-Aid solution that doesn't even work. Changing the built environment is a very expensive, we know, but effective solution to the reckless driving and pedestrian deaths that everyone is rightfully concerned about. Increase the funding for the Right to Counsel program. Not to mention the fact that the implementation of this program is already months behind. We already know that the funding allocated for this program is not nearly enough to be able to provide sufficient legal defense for the thousands of people in this city who are facing eviction. The program needs increased funding before it's implemented, absolutely. I'm also calling for the increase of the pot for the impacted tenants fund that was passed this past session. Y'all know how bad the eviction crisis is in our city. Affordable housing is crumbling as we speak. Look at Heritage House. Almost 200 Black elders, most of whom were retired educators, were displaced suddenly with nowhere to go in January. And Fountains at Carondelet is going down the same route to displace hundreds of mostly Black low-income families in our city. So especially while this city is giving away tax incentives to luxury hotels instead of investing in building more affordable housing, I'd like for the Board of Aldermen to recommend that the Board of E&A reallocate more funding to the Impacted Tenants Fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Tracy Stanton.
That would like this. That's really weird. How y'all doing? My name is Tracy Stanton. I am a resident of the First Ward, also a Black survivor of interpersonal and systemic violence myself. And first, just thinking about the First Ward, driving down Broadway, the streets are horrible. The potholes, you can literally bust the bottom of your car out. I have literally seen it happen with my own eyes. Also, it's a food desert in the area, just like no healthy food options, just like the areas that many people already spoke about that I organize in, such as the 11th Ward or the 4th Ward. You have to drive miles and miles and miles to get a smoothie, to get an apple, any of those things. And I really honor and appreciate the community-based organizations and food banks that are providing our community members with healthy food options, because we know that having limited access to resources such as education, food, housing, medical care, health care, mental care, kid care is all violence. And we also know that violence is a systemic conjunction of poverty, which is also manufactured by the state. So today, at this budget hearing, you all know that I'm with the folks, right? And we're going to talk about divesting and investing. And we're going to talk about the failed arrest and incarcerate model, the ineffectiveness of jails, prisons, and police, and the illusion of public safety that this city continues to pour its resources into. But before I discuss the shot spotter that is at the end of my street, I do also, just like Rachel, just want to discuss the nonchalant demeanor and the lack of intention and preparation for the people that represent SLMPD and the Department of Corrections, because the commissioner and Robert Tracy, it's totally disrespectful for them to come before the city unprepared with this ill-informed, I don't give a attitude, and it's like a smack in the face to every person that have lost their lives at CJC or been harmed or killed by the hands of the police. So we must divest from the institutions of harm that surveil and kill our community members and reallocate those funds into programming that promote public safety and well-being, such as housing, education, medical, mental health care, youth programs, employment opportunities, and transportation. So the budget proposes that we spend $1.63 million from the general fund, which is 28% of the fund, on the police department and police retirement, in addition to another $5.6 million allocated for the city councilor's police unit. This brings the total proposed general budget to about $168 million and 29% of that budget. $2 million, which is about 3% of the general fund, goes to the human services with all of the programming in it that they already discussed around housing, around homeless shelters, around youth programs. And so we are demanding that you defund the most obvious source of waste and abuse in the police department, including SLMPD, the overtime, the vacant positions, the SWAT, the shot spotters, and real-time crime center. And speaking directly to shot spotters, the one at the end of my street that is just so infuriating, when there are a multitude of people that are walking around that do not have housing, that are seeking treatment centers, and I know I stop and I pull over and talk to them, but they say that they do not have anywhere to go, and the city is not funding any of those things. Yet Shot Spotters has generated 19,473 calls and led to 13 arrests. They have dedicated $300,000 annually to technology. Meanwhile, the people are not getting the resources that they need. So I want to say that we continue to be here asking for the same thing. The people continue to be here asking for the same thing. We need to be more creative in the ways in which we address the situations that affect us internally and not just externally. Lastly, we are still keeping people on lockdown at CJC for 23 hours. The commissioner talked about it, and she said that they spend a whopping $8,000 on programming. $8,000 on programming, and they depend on volunteers to come in and give more labor to this system that we have already given enough labor to.
Ms. Stanton, that
Yes.
is your time.
Okay, I got one more thing to say. Lastly, currently in the pretrial detention, the city has cut the budget to be able to provide the people that are accused with representation at their second hearing, which then leaves them incarcerated for 30 more days in a jail that we know notoriously kills people. So we need to divest and invest into shit that really works. Thank you. Excuse my language, elders.
Thank you, Ms. Stanton. Next, we have Ms. Inez Bordeaux.
Good evening. I'm Inez Bordeaux. I live in the 3rd Ward. I am also the committee woman of the 3rd Ward. First, I want to thank the committee for being here and for doing this. I really appreciate it. I'm really grateful that you all are here in the community to hear directly from the people that you need to hear from. But I also want to note that there are members of the community that are not here, or excuse me, members of the committee that are not here. I understand that there may be conflicts, but this is their job. And what could be more important than hearing from the community that you need to hear the most from? And so, like, going forward, let's make sure every member of Budget and Public Employees Committee makes it to these meetings. Okay, so with that being said, I disagree with this budget. I think this budget is immoral. Budgets are moral documents. If you show me your budget, I will show you what you prioritize, what you believe in, what is important to you. And as I'm looking through the budget and I saw the budget presentations, we are spending, I want to make sure I'm right, in fiscal year 23, we were spending $250 million a year on the police. That number jumped up $40 million in the very next fiscal year. Fiscal year 24, we started spending $290 million on the police. And this year, the only thing that has changed in that budget is about $300,000. So everyone who is saying what the community needs, that's where all our money is. You want to get the streets fixed? Go to the police department. You want programming for the youth services? Because what I have learned is that in the summertime, there are 3 things that you can depend on: death, taxes, and downtown business owners complaining about kids. Last year, we spent $150K on youth programming for the children. And that wasn't even out of our tax dollars. That was grant money. That was pass-through money. So what I want to see funded, if y'all don't fix these potholes. My daughter just broke the ball bearing on her car yesterday from hitting a pothole. That's $300 in repairs for my daughter's car because we have potholes everywhere. Take the money from the police. I also, like I said, youth services, let's super fund Slate so that we can get all of these kids jobs, so they can all have something to do. And by kids, I'm talking about mine. I got a 15 and a 16-year-old who can't find a job. We need Slate. Services for the unhoused. Let's go ahead and start getting ready for the winter now, because we know, just like last year and the year before and the year before, people are going to die in the winter time. Unhoused people are going to die from being exposed to the elements. Most importantly, I want to see the Memorial Community Resource Hub fully funded, like the Re-envisioning the Workhouse Steering Committee called for. Things that I do not want to see funded: SLMPD should not get another red cent. Not one red cent. I want to see the vacant positions defunded. I want to see SWAT and ShotSpotter defunded. I want to see the Real-Time Crime Center defunded. And almost as importantly as the Memorial Community Resource Hub. And I need y'all to look at me when I say this. I don't want to see a single dime going toward the mayor's ill-thought-out, horrific, unconscionable plan to move unhoused people from St. Louis City out to the workhouse on a toxic piece of land in the middle of nowhere in an area not zoned from housing, miles from other communities, from civilization, from grocery stores, from bus stops. I don't want to see any money in this fiscal year, next fiscal year, or the following fiscal year going toward the mayor's terrible plan. And again, I thank y'all for being here. I'll see y'all again twice next week.
Thank you, Ms. Bordeaux. Next, we have Ms. Tammy Bufford.
Hi, my name is Tammy Bufford. I am a resident of the 3rd Ward. We say that budgets are our moral documents. And so what does our budget say about the city of St. Louis? It says that we do not value the people in the community. It says that we would rather spend $13 million on 197 vacant police positions instead of funding the Right to Counsel and Impact Attendance Fund. It says that we would rather spend $50,000 on training for the police chief who has over 30 years of service and experience, instead of providing job training for the community. It says that we would rather spend $2.7 million on 54 vacant positions for probation officers instead of funding, providing affordable housing for the community. We would rather spend $12 million on police overtime instead of providing health and human services. It says we would rather spend $102,000 on police travel, membership fees, and vehicle washing instead of providing recreational activities for the youth. In the fiscal year 2025 budget, the SLMPD is allotted more money than any other department in the city, and the police do not keep us safe. Instead of continuing to increase the budget on a failed arrest and incarcerate system, we should reallocate those funds and invest in the community. We should be investing in human services, job training, affordable housing, the right to counsel, public transit, health care, and mental health services. We have closed schools and recreational centers in our neighborhoods so that our youth do not have a safe place to hang out. Their only alternative is to hang out in the streets. We need to reopen the schools and recreational centers and provide them with the funding that they need so that our kids can have a safe place to hang out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bufford. Lastly, we have Ms. Kyla Dunshore.
Well, I agree with pretty much everything everybody said. My only question is, if we want to provide the social services, we have to have the tax base to do it. So I think it was you saying, like, the roads are terrible. You had somebody's daughter, like, broken axle. Like, if we don't have trash picked up, if we don't have potholes fixed, if we don't have a stoplight that works, if we can't stop people from running into us and totaling our cars, we won't have any tax money to pay for these social services. So we need to get a foundation. Like, we need a balance of it all. Like, we can't just put all of our basket here or here. We have to have a balance of it, I think. So that's my sort of round.
Thank you. That was the last, unless we have someone else who's wanting to speak.
You had cut me off. So, okay, you addressed the 26 million loss that you set aside, right? Northside loss of residents, she just talked about that. And you talked about licensing for the refuse, the trash truck or whatever. And everybody just came up with their problems, they itches and they thorns in their side or whatever. I just want to provide, lastly, some solutions. I believe the solution is me. I'm a black man that knows the streets. I know corporate. I've been in all kind of situations and places. And I just need some more people to help. I overheard the women sitting here and saying, where the men at? Where you done potholed, locked up, and killed and fentanyl all the men out, that they don't come out to these chess tournaments that I'm trying to have, or these chess sessions that I'm trying to have, or these chess houses that I'm trying to buy and create on each side of the town. And Rasheen, Ms. Boyd, we done talked about these things, and we're eventually gonna get them. Me, I don't want to get discouraged because nobody comes and help. You know, I don't want to feel like I'm on an island and I'm just by myself. Instead of giving the police $168 million, give them $160 and give the $8 million to these people here. You know, people like Tracy and people like her, and some of these men, because they know what to do with it. They've been running households, they've been running these companies, and they've been running these situations and been the backbone this long. You know, give it to them. The police, they'll find the money in the places that they find it at. We don't need another robotic dog that's gonna bite me. You know?
Oh, all right.
And that's it, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to take a moment and just thank you all for being here and sharing your perspective before turning it over to the committee members to maybe offer some thoughts on some of the testimony we heard today. I did want to point out that we do have one absence tonight, Alderwoman Velasquez, who was in our hearings all day today, but she is actually not well. So we were grateful that she's not here because she wasn't able to tune in remotely, but I'm sure, I have no doubt she'll watch this hearing later. But it is important that we're all here. We all do serve on this committee, and I'm proud that all of us who could be here tonight are. Oh, you're right. I'm so sorry. I forgot about my vice chair. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I don't have an answer to that right now. But I will turn it over to comments from members of the committee in seniority of those present. Alderman Oldenburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to thank everyone for coming tonight. It's important that we hear from you. Decisions are made by folks who show up. And I also want to let you all know that this committee, this is not falling on deaf ears. This committee takes this work, they take public comment very serious. I know the chairwoman does, and my other two colleagues that are up here do, as well as those who are not. So as the chairwoman indicated, we have the ability to improve, right? There is a cut and put back opportunity, which means we can slash money and replace it elsewhere, and we can provide that alternative budget back to the Board of Estimate and Apportionment. So that can take place, that does take place. I will also concede there should be some compromise around where there are bloated line items around public safety and other areas, and into more root causes of crime. I certainly concede that is a priority. I know that's a priority of the mayor's office. I know that is a priority of many members on this committee and many members of the Board of Aldermen. It's going to take continual work, but I think those are important statements that were made tonight of where we can shift dollars to ensure that there's a long-lasting commitment to North City. I think we heard that loud and clear. And holistic safety around recreation and early childhood education. All those things are important to me. All those things I know are important to my colleagues. So again, I want to thank you all very much for getting up into the microphone and speaking to your government. It is an important thing, and I hope you all have a good night. Thank you.
Alderwoman Saulnier.
First, I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I know that it can seem frustrating and feel like you're talking to a brick wall a lot of times when you're dealing with, government and government officials. So I hope that at least today you do feel something from the fact that we tried to make sure we went out of our way to find a location in the city. We wanted, I know Chairwoman Spencer was very intentional about wanting to go central in the city and hoping that it was inaccessible. And I also know that a lot of folks mentioned folks not being here. So I want to also let you know that our budget timeline had changed. We thought that we would have some additional time to go through our process. And so the chairwoman and the committee actually had to work to move up our community meetings because we wanted to be able to hear from the community before we have to go and make changes and make amendments should that happen. But because the timeline got changed, I think our timeline to put this into the public and to let the community know, I certainly usually always let folks know at town halls and even make a flyer when we have big committee hearings as I did last session, but we didn't have that time this time. In regards to some of the specific things, I tried to take notes. I don't know that I'll get to everyone's comment, but someone mentioned the city auditing process. That is a function of the comptroller's office. We do have city audits that are available. When this is over, I will put some cards up here and you can send me an email and I'll send you a link of where you can go to see the city audits of all the departments. And I will also say that we're having conversations as a city about what would it look like to do our auditing a bit different. And for that work, you might want to look at the Charter Commission. Someone else also mentioned being a little bit confused as far as the medical overlap between the Department of Health and the work that's happening at the CJC. Of course, that can be confusing. I'm sure many of you are aware that we've had some issues within our jails. And so to address that, the director of the Department of Health has taken on a stronger leadership and oversight role in our CJC and is now working to get some mental health and substance services in our CJC. So they're looking to hire a psychiatrist and to offer a number of other mental health services for the detainees within that facility. Again, we got a very thorough presentation about that. So if you want that, you can also shoot me an email and I'll send you a link where you can go to see that hearing and see that information. The ARPA funds, as the chairwoman said, there's a fund. You can also shoot me an email and I'll send you a link straight to that ARPA transparency portal. A lot of folks talked about vacancy. I agree with you. I want to live in a community where our buildings are standing up, where we're a premier community. I want to live in a community where children are happy to walk the streets, where parents don't have to have second thoughts about children roaming the streets. And I want to live in a city where my peers want to stay here and they want to start families and build out. And so I hope that you all will see some of the vacancy work that's going on in our individual communities, but in the city as well, because I do know that we have done some work to expand how we do vacancy, whether that's giving, kind of partnering with the Vacancy Collaborative and creating that, working with Legal Eastern Services Missouri, and just a number of initiatives that are new and still building, but especially would bring to your attention, which is in our budget, the Problem Properties Office that has been expanded, has been given additional money, and that office takes negligent owners to court so that we can hold them accountable and make property owners who, as you all said, usually don't live here, and so they could care less how the buildings look, and are exploring that route. The 50/50 sidewalk program was also mentioned. I'm not a fan of the program. I don't know the best solution, but it does seem ineffective to me. I've got constituents that have been on it since I've graduated college. So it seems, very outdated. And it's also, to me, it's expensive, and so I would like us to figure out a model where if the city's going to pay for sidewalks, we just pay for it, and the person doesn't have to come up with 50% and match it with 50. Homelessness came up. If you follow what's going on, I'm very passionate about the unhoused issue. I certainly think there's a lot that the city can do to be more proactive, but again, I think that some of these issues are issues that you have to stay tuned in and you have to stay plugged in. This is great, but we have been discussing homelessness the entire session, and there's been proposals and solutions that have gone before the board before us that we've come from us, but also from the administration, that I hope you'll kind of stay tuned in and look at. Some of those budget items, your pamphlet's very specific, but there's a line item breakdown that you can find that identifies homeless services and kind of what the city's plan is to address that. And then last but not least, the police. you know, I heard some folks say, we need police, we want police. I heard some other folks say, well, we want you to invest in people. What I know from my year here is like government is about finding the middle ground as much as you can that works for people. And I think there's a way to invest in communities and to get us to a place where there's less reliance on police. And I think most of my colleagues would agree with that, because even if you want to rely on them, capacity is capacity. And we don't have the officers to meet that. And I do think you guys are on the right note. I'll say with looking at the vacancy, there is 197 vacancies in the police department. And if you look at the trend for the last few years, the vacancy numbers go up. So I think we do need to be realistic in the police department and other departments about where vacancy is and maybe shifting that money to some other things. And with that, I really appreciate your comment. I know the chairwoman wants to keep a certain decorum, so I'm not going to engage specifically with a member right now. But as I said, I will leave my cards here, so any information that you want, any questions that you may have, I'm happy to help you find that information, and I hope that you guys will stay engaged and stay tuned in, and thank you for showing up tonight.
Alderman Aldridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. First and foremost, sound like a little broken record, and this will happen when you're at the end. You know, you got to say everything everybody already said. But I do want to thank everybody for coming out on this Saturday. Y'all could be doing, or I said Saturday. Woo! Listen, it is this Wednesday. We had budget has been going for the last probably 2 weeks. So today we met at 9 a.m. and we didn't get out to about 2:30 or 3 o'clock. So every day the chairwoman has us getting up tomorrow at 9 o'clock here in other departments. So the days are kind of running, but we also have a public engagement session like this on the Saturday, so I'm jumping to it. But I want to thank everybody for coming out on this Wednesday, because y'all could be doing anything else. It's nice outside, but y'all are here trying to figure out how we can improve the city of St. Louis. I do also want to thank the Urban League for hosting us today. They are always amazing. I want to thank STL TV, who is broadcasting this for people who can't be here to be able to see it, as well as our staff. Got to give a shout out also to Alderwoman Shamim Clark Hubbard, who is in the building. I know a lot of the Power 10 showed up. Is it Miss Pat back there? Okay, good. I wrote your name down, so I got to make sure I'm going to reference you. So, yeah, I got a hard-working alderwoman. She shows up and shows out. She's not even on this committee, but she's here today to also hear what the people have to say. So a couple things, I may be redundant. I'll try not to make sure we can get out of here. I want to cover the gentleman in the back. So the $26 million, you keep talking about, you know, this whole, the chairwoman kind of covered it. You know, the earnings tax is 1/3 of the city's budget, so it's a huge impact to the city of St. Louis. During the COVID pandemic, there was a group of people who lived in the county, but their business was in the city, but they were still getting that earnings tax. They won that lawsuit. So I wouldn't say it's a hole in the budget. So the budget right now also has reserve. We're sitting on like 100-something reserve. What we did, or what we didn't do, because the budget process before it starts with us, it starts with the mayor, it starts with the comptroller, it starts with President Green, and they send the budget to the budget committee, and then we try to figure out what needs to be increased, decreased, or whatnot. But they set aside $26 million, knowing that either through Jefferson City, the crazy Republicans up there had legislation to try to take it away, or that the lawsuit that was pending would potentially take away a significant amount of earnings tax. So it's not so much of a hole, but there was a safeguard. It's like if you know you're about to pay, your car note's coming, and you got to pay it, they kind of set aside money on that. However, it may have an impact in the long haul, because the earnings tax is a huge revenue for the city of St. Louis, and we need to get creative in different ways of trying to figure out how do we generate money in the city of St. Louis, not off of this one big tax, and also in a way that we don't tax individuals, but can generate money other ways. Well, I can't engage with you one way we can, but I'm gonna do a plug here. I got a bill that is trying to extend dispensaries that will bring in more money, tax money for that, but I won't get into that. So Ms. Gwen from the 10th Ward, I know you are very passionate about the Demetrius Johnson Center, and I want to first say thank you for that passion. Don't give up on that fight. I know it is so many, you know, Dimitri is a legend in our community. Even though he's not here, his soul still lives on throughout all of us. And I know that building means so much to you and so many others. So thank you for continuing to advocate to try to figure out what could be done with the building. I know it's a huge, beautiful structure. It has impacted and changed a lot of people's lives, and hopefully there can be a solution. When you was talking, I did look up, you brought up parks and recreations, and that's kind of all under one department. And you brought up schools. I do want to say schools are critical to the foundation of the city of St. Louis. Unfortunately, the schools aren't necessarily under the purview of the Board of Aldermen, so we can't make any, we can do TIFs and stuff that take away, but we don't really have like control over the decision making of the SLPS. But I know Alderwoman Sonia was a former board member. A lot of us do support SLPS. I know Alderwoman Clark Hubbard Child is an SLPS that just recently graduated. Also Alderwoman Kara Spencer. I just always hear her talking about her baby graduating. She don't play about her child. So also Alderwoman Kara Spencer Child's an SLPS, so we care about SLPS. In 2023, as far as the parks, we have been trying to increase our parks and recreation and forestry. They all under one department. So in 23, they roughly got about 31 million. In 24, they got about 39, and this year they have 42 million. We actually had them come today. There's a new executive director who is over our recreations. She's amazing. Is some amazing just period about black women, but she's an amazing individual, and she's trying to do a lot of good stuff. She talked about the programming. If people would like to see different programming in our rec centers, they would love to get those different opinions and stuff. At City Hall on Wednesdays, we'd be in the rotunda doing step class, and they've took that step class to some of the rec centers. So if you do have ideas and ways that we can, I think somebody said, just get out of basketball, right? The traditional things. How do we do innovative things for our youth, for our, I won't say seniors, people over 30 years old, because I'm 30. So if you're over 30, for people over that age, if there's different ideas that want to, bring that to our rec centers. Ms. Cole, committee woman of the 11th Ward. Alderwoman Sonia talked about the audit. The audit isn't necessarily in the budget. That's under like the comptroller's budget, and she has funding for that, and I know she has done some audits. So I think Alderwoman Sonia said if you want to know about which department needs to be audited, I'm sure she'll be able to send that information. She also talked about that health department. The CJC, I'm going to be real, over the last several years has been a hot mess. There's been too many people dying in our jails under our watch. While jail is not a place that's supposed to be luxury, it also shouldn't be a place that is inhumane, where people are going in perfectly fine and not being able to come out. So the health department under Dr. Mahdi, who is an amazing individual, has enacted an emergency contract because the old provider in the jail wasn't providing a lot of the services that people need in the jail. So Dr. Mahdi has enacted an emergency contract, which will eventually go out to RFP, to ensure that our inmates are still getting their medication, making sure they get the mental health stuff that they need. So that's where maybe some of that confusion came in on you hearing the health department now involved in the jail, because there hasn't been a health level or health expert really taking the time to make sure that our inmates are okay. And we also got to remember, the people in jail, these ain't like horrible criminals. They have not been charged. They still have their due process. And during the pandemic, a lot of those individuals have been sitting there because of the jails have been stopped. The jails and courts have been, or the courts have been backlogged. So these are people that, may ran a red light or maybe have a warrant because of child support or whatever. And they just still need their due process. I heard somebody talk about demos, especially in Northside, born and raised in Northside, Carr Square Village. We do have a lot of buildings in North St. Louis that have been standing for too long, and it's so sad when you have to knock down these beautiful brick buildings, because they don't make those brick buildings like they used to no more. But there is funds through the building division. There's actually two pots. They have $3 million in one pot, and then there's another $2.6 million in a special vacancy or a special demolition pot to be able to start to demo those buildings. The unfortunate thing is, in every department, no matter what department it is, every department in the city of St. Louis is understaffed because post-COVID, people like, I can work from home. Instead of working for the city, I can go work for a for-profit and make a whole bunch of money. So it's taken our city workers a little time to get around to that. The 50/50, I also believe we need to do something differently with that. I don't do the 50/50 in my ward. If somebody requests a sidewalk, I just pay for it fully because it takes too long, it's too costly, and it should be on our end, not on the residents' end. The jail commissioner, I know somebody brought up jail commissioner. This committee, like Alderman Oldenburg said, you know, we get the budget secondly, but don't get it twisted. We are looking at a lot of different things in a lot of different ways that we can have voices, not just our voices, but we do public input like this. There was a public process during the original budget, but it was like 2 minutes and it's one time. We have 3 different public meetings that we are going out to so we can actually hear from the community and hear what the people want so that we can actually go back and actually make a difference in the budget. And one of the things that we are asking is the jail commissioner come back because the presentation that was given kind of fell very shortfall. More money to violence prevention, big believer in that. We need to figure out how do we get on the front end of things while police is reactionary. How do we get to the source of things to make sure when we have violence prevention programs, we don't have to necessarily need the policing if we already made it happen ourselves. I'm gonna start to wrap it up, I promise. Right to counsel and impact attendance fund, for people who have said that. I know Alderwoman Clark Hubbard have not carried both of those. I know carried one of them. It's a very important legislation, and you know, sometimes we have to start somewhere, and it was huge to be able to get those things done. And just like any time legislation, once you get into, once it is enacted, you sometimes may have to go back and look and see how we make it stronger. I've been working and talking with our financial analyst in the back at the Board of Alderman, Ryan Coleman. We will be looking to make sure that we can fully fund Impact Attendant Fund and Right to Counsel to $500,000 because those services are important, so we are looking at that. And then lastly, policing. I'm also a big believer that we have to be smarter on crime, not tougher on crime. The days of just being tough and arresting hasn't got us anywhere. I know you're not going to like this, ma'am, but we are, you know, for too long, we do continue to, you know, look at the police budget. The police budget in public safety is roughly 50-something of the budget. And for a very long time, we continue to allocate 300-some officers, and they just cannot fill them. They're not the only department. It's other people that in city government can't. But we also need to get into a place where, you know, public safety isn't just policing. Public safety is strong, safe neighborhoods. Public safety is the health department. Public safety is the building division, which they fall under public safety. But we put so much praise on our policing as if they are the end-all, be-all. And to be honest, I'm looking out in the community right now, and I see the community is the start of how we really reduce public safety. And it's time for us to start investing in a holistic way in public safety and not just always saying, you know, police is the answer. How do we look at different models of making sure like social workers are out there in the community? How do we make sure that we have community centers where people could be able to go to them? How do we make sure that we knock down these vacant buildings? Because when a young man who's 8 years old constantly walks his block for 7 years and that building is vacant, it started to, you know, make him be mentally oppressed. So you give a politician a mic, you go on forever, but I got to end with, I thought about being a preacher if I'm a politician, but I will end with Miss Pat of the 10th Ward. She said something I think that is super important. Government plays a role, but we as a community also play a role, and we have more power. Y'all have more power than the folks up here. Don't forget that. Don't lose your power. She said, speak up, and it made me think of famous Betty Thompson. Miss Betty Thompson always said, oh, I hope I don't get this wrong now, I'm trying to quote it. She said, either speak up, get up, wake up, pray up, fight up, keep fighting up, and if you don't do none of that, shut up. So make sure y'all continue to do that, and the ones that ain't doing that ain't in this room. So thank y'all so much for being here.
Thank you. Okay, you have an announcement? All right. That's a hard act to follow. Yeah. I think Alderman Aldrich pretty much covered everything. But he brought up, you know, the point I want to just bring home. You all have an enormous voice. These are impactful, these hearings. we are gonna go back, we heard a lot about potholes tonight, and you know what? It was just one, for example, one thing we heard, potholes, like our axles are breaking. We heard a lot about audits, vacant buildings, reckless driving, public safety, re-envisioning it, rethinking how we're investing in our city. We heard a lot of things here. We are gonna go back and we are gonna advocate for some changes in our budget, but that's not the end of the process. Please follow up with us. We heard you, but we would not be, it would be very helpful if you want to send us your thoughts in writing, remind us, and remind the members of the Board of E&A what your priorities are, because whatever we advocate for does need to go back through that process and does need to get reapproved through the Board of E&A. We are not the, unless we can all agree that we get it through. So make sure that you make your voice heard across city government. Lastly, again, thank the Urban League for being such amazing hosts whenever the city, you all, this has been a very big feat to hold us here. Our city staff, who's gone above and beyond, as always, to accommodate public engagement. We should also thank the President's Office. We didn't have a lot of funding to be able to host some of these things, and we were able to make that happen at the last minute. We heard from you all last time that these hearings, being able to ask questions and weigh in was important within neighborhoods, so we wanted to make sure that that was accommodated this year. And thank you to the committee members who really, we have been going very deep into our budgets. Our city departments have been very accommodating. Many of you mentioned that you've watched some, if not all, of our hearings. Thank you for doing that. Please feel free to weigh in via email or in any way that you want while we're conducting your business. Please continue to engage, and if you have specific questions on specific departments, all of those hearings are available online. If you don't want to wade through where they are, if you have a specific question about where the Parks Department or where the Health Department or where those hearings are, please feel free to email us, and we will email you a link to make it easier for you to find out where we went into the details of any particular department. And with that, I'll turn it over to the committee for final announcements. Alderwoman Saunier.
I just know a lot of folks ask questions about the RAM settlement funds. That is in an interest-bearing account right now, collecting $800,000 a month because we have ARPA funds that have to get spent by a certain time, or we have to send them back. So we want to focus on getting this first big pool of money out, making sure we don't have to send the money back. But we do have a committee of the whole meeting that I'm chair of this committee on June 4th at 3:30 p.m. And you can either attend virtually or at City Hall, and we meet at least monthly. And so you can see, we have a portal. We ask folks what their suggestions are, which is very similar to what you all said in this room, how they want to see the money spent. But again, I just want to lift up that meeting on June 4th at 3:30 p.m., either virtually or at City Hall.
Okay. And with that, thank you all. This has been a very instructive, constructive, and informative meeting for all of us. We're not taking any more public comment.
No, it's not a comment. You said you were having a meeting on Saturday.
Yeah, we are having thank you for that. We're having our second public engagement, public input hearing will be Saturday, 10 a.m., roughly till noon at the 5-Star Senior Center on Arsenal. Is that not right? Do we change? Oh, the International Institute, which is also on Arsenal. My apologies. Arsenal, roughly at Arsenal and Grand. That's where our input session will be. Okay, and with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Do I have a second? We are adjourned.
Good job, Carol.